life, love, and therapy. This show is about learning tips, advice, and ideas about how to improve our lives and relationships from the viewpoint of a therapist. My name is Jimmy Olawale. This is episode 3, and the title of the show is The Truth About Boundaries. Something can be said about the idea that we teach people how to treat us. Many of us are afraid of setting boundaries because we do not want to lose the relationships that we have. We are afraid that by letting the person we value know that their actions or lack of action is hurtful to us, they will reject us, get upset with us, or think that we're bad people. Boundaries are important to your well-being. Not having boundaries is not good for your health or the longevity of your relationships. Having boundaries mean that you care about yourself enough to let the person hurting you know, and that you care about the relationship with them enough to be vulnerable with them so that they can make changes and the relationship can deepen and grow. When we don't have boundaries, we become resentful. It is the friend that feels like what is going on in their life is so important that everyone should drop what they are doing to be there for them. But when you need this friend, she's nowhere to be found. This can create a conducive environment for resentment to grow, and the friend's insensitive actions and your lack of candor with your friend could eventually lead to the demise of the relationship. Issues of boundary setting is not limited to friendships. It can occur in marital and romantic partnerships, with siblings, parents, in-laws, and employers. Some of the common issues in relationships where boundary setting can be difficult is with a partner that has substance use issues, pornography addiction, gambling issues, or unmanaged mental health issues. When that partner refuses to get help and your mental health and physical health and your quality of life starts to diminish, you'll become resentful. In that case, what happens is that you lose your sanity, you lose your peace and health because you're trying so hard to be there for someone that is refusing to be present for themselves. What you're doing by not holding them accountable is you're not just condoning their behavior, you're enabling it. Boundaries in this situation means that you have a frank conversation with the spouse or the partner about their behavior and the impact on you in the relationship. You ask them to get help. You can even get them the resources. But ultimately, if they choose not to address that issue, boundary setting means that you give yourself permission to create a healthy distance and absolve yourself of responsibility for their health. I have seen situations where people have used their addictions or mental health as a tool of manipulation and created a toxic environment in a relationship. What I mean by this is that in the relationship, you are actually unable to bring up your grievances, the things that the person did to hurt or harm you, because the person will always make it about them. The person will become very upset about your lack of understanding of their trauma or whatever their diagnosis is or whatever their ongoing struggle is. In essence, they don't give you the room for you to be able to express your concerns. They refuse to validate your feelings or to take responsibility for their actions. Instead, they twist things around so much that you find yourself apologizing to them or keeping quiet about what hurts you. This is a typical on-boundary person, and they thrive in this type of environment that lack accountability. They don't realize that there is a difference between intent and impact. They may not intend to harm you with their actions or inactions, but the impact of their actions or lack thereof is not diminished by their intentions. Unboundary people can come across as selfish and manipulative. They're often energized by the drama that they create. They're only okay if they can complain, but any concerns you have is automatically perceived as criticism, and they're quick to jump to extreme actions. They can claim that you don't love them, or you're going to leave them, or that maybe the best thing is for you to stop being their friend or their partner by claiming that they're very bad. Then you find yourself trying to convince them that they're good and that you want to be with them. In this situation, how do you maintain boundaries? Because on one hand, you feel sorry for this person, for this person's experiences, and you don't want them to think that they are not loved, and yet you want to share what is hurting you. People like this will put you in an emotional state where you have to choose them or choose yourself. In this type of situation, you maintain boundaries by standing your ground and sharing how you feel. You choose yourself because each time you choose them, you really communicate that your needs and your thoughts and your concerns and frustrations do not matter. What you need to do is to be firm about what you're trying to get across. In some cases, this person may become aggressive as a way to keep you from speaking. And that is definitely an indicator that the friendship or relationship is about the other person and not about the two of you. Your purpose then in their life is to serve them. This relationship is not expected to be symbiotic. A person that is solely focused on how hurt they feel and have no room to listen to your hurt or frustration is someone that is disconnected from their own emotions. They appear to be emotionally volatile or they emotionally shut down. That emotional volatility or stonewalling is not evidence that they're connected to their emotions. The volatility or stonewalling is a tool of manipulation and is meant to keep people at a safe distance. When people have learned over the years that the way to protect themselves is by yelling, using their bodies in an aggressive manner, or expressing anger in ways that make other people uncomfortable and unsafe, or that when they shut down, they'll be left alone, then they can over time fine-tune that skill and use it again and again. So when somebody is unable to look at themselves, then they cannot bear to face your own issues. They simply can't give you what they do not have. You cannot force someone that does not like facing their own emotions to look at yours. A friendship that requires that you are always giving isn't symbiotic. A romantic relationship that requires that you are always sacrificing isn't symbiotic. Some people only know how to withdraw from a friendship bank account, but they seldom make deposits. The same way that someone that does not know how to look at their own emotions will struggle to look at your emotion, is the same way that someone that lacks boundaries can become upset when you set boundaries. What does this mean? Well, when people who are not boundaried see boundaries being set, they struggle to accept it when someone else sets the boundaries. They will experience boundary setting as rude, as selfish, as proud, and mean. This is why boundary setting is so difficult. Because you're not just playing by the same rules. People who are not boundaried believe that their lack of boundaries is what makes them nice, loving, and loved. People do not love you more because you don't set boundaries for them. They don't love you more because you are a yes person or a walkover. When you constantly say yes to things that you should say no to, when you commit to activities that you can't financially afford, when you commit to doing things that you cannot emotionally afford or you don't have the time to do, and then you eventually stress yourself out in unimaginable ways to make that happen, it really doesn't make people love you more. This isn't the same thing as being responsible or dependable, but you can definitely be responsible and dependable and yet lack boundaries. In this case, what you're doing is creating a sense of entitlement. When people identify you as the person they can always come to get things done no matter what, before they reach you, they already have an expectation that you will say yes. What disappoints us is not what people do. What disappoints us is the expectations of what people will or should do. So ultimately, you set yourself up with no wiggle room. This is why when you have struggled to set boundaries for years, when you've decided that you want to change and start becoming more healthy, people balk because it makes people very upset. Because their expectations of you have changed. They expect that if they need money, you will always give it to them. They expect that no matter how financially irresponsible they become, you will always take care of them. They expect that it does not matter how many times they cheat on you, you will never leave. They expect that no matter how many lies they tell, you will always accept and believe them. It is the spouse that expects that their partner will make sacrifices always for the relationship. They just take their spouses or partners for granted. It is the siblings that expect that you will always be the only one to take care of your parents without any input from them. It is the overbearing parent that expects to pick a career that will make them proud without any thought of what their own child wants. It is the pastor that expects that you will always say yes to their requests and make donations to whatever they have going on. When you are not boundaried, people don't appreciate you more. They just take you for granted because your people-pleasing attitude is baked into the way they see you. So now you become trapped in the mask that you and others have co-created for you. You do not want to disappoint people because you co-created the persona. You don't want to disappoint them because you're afraid that who you really are isn't good enough and will be rejected. Ultimately, isn't that what boundary issues are about? Boundary issues are about our fear. They're about our fear of vulnerability, our fear of showing up as us, our fear that if people really know who we are, they will run. Our fear that people will not like the real us. So we buy their love by doing things and agreeing to things that we shouldn't. As an immigrant, I know this well. I grew up in a culture where speaking up, giving candor, and setting boundaries is frowned upon. Everyone feels entitled to express how they feel about when you're getting married, when you're having children, and how many children you will have. I can't tell you how many people asked me, when are you going to have a child after I had been married for less than 6 months? I grew up watching my parents give so much and stretching themselves and sacrificing so much only to be betrayed. I have personally witnessed situations where an ungrateful person said to the person that clearly overgave that they didn't ask them to make all the sacrifices that were made on their behalf. I have also seen people say things like, if you had not done it, God would have raised someone else to do it. You should count yourself worthy that God used you as a vessel. From my own observation and personal experience, I learned that giving more than you can afford is not healthy for you. It's not healthy for the other person and the relationship that you're trying to build. The saying that charity begins at home is no different from the idea that you cannot pour from an empty cup. I tell friends and clients alike that we're like cups. We pour from the cup into all of our relationships and all of the things that we're supposed to do, our jobs, our friends, all of our responsibilities. But we need to keep an eye on the cup. We can't go pouring everything until we're empty. The goal is not for you to be empty. The purpose of the cup is to hold some content. That means it requires filling and judicious giving. You cannot keep pouring when your content is low. This is why we're always so stressed, having headaches and stomach issues. Many of us struggle with so much anxiety because we have unexpressed feelings. We're not even sure of what we are feeling, let alone know how to express them. Many of us are deep in our depression because we refuse to say, I can't do this thing. We wear ourselves out and we wear ourselves thin. Many of our relationships are filled with strife because we are afraid to rock the boat. We are afraid to say that our partners hurt us. We are afraid to confront difficult issues. We are afraid to draw the line in the sand and say, no more. Don't expect that you can keep taking advantage of me. No more. Don't expect that I am okay with you when we are out with friends and you speak so badly of me and make mean jokes at my expense. Many of us are afraid to say, no more, honey. You hurt me when you did that. Many of us are afraid to say, no more, honey, that I don't like the way that you compare me with your friend's wife or husband. Why? Because we live in fear. So we create fake peace. The fake peace that looks like a beautiful, shiny car on the outside. But when you open the door, it is filled with dirty laundry, trash, it smells, and the chairs are worn out and have holes in them. So how is your relationship supposed to grow and have depth when you won't tell the truth? When you won't be vulnerable and set boundaries? It just cannot grow. Boundary setting requires vulnerability and knowing that you're good enough to show up, that you're worthy enough to be yourself, that you are loved and valuable enough that your feelings matter. It requires practice, but it is so nice and freeing to be boundaried. You can now feel free to be yourself with your friends and loved ones. Some people might feel uncomfortable when you set boundaries. The freedom you have to be yourself might trigger their insecurity and lack of freedom. I remember working with someone a while ago, and the person shared that they were upset with a coworker because the coworker was too outspoken. I asked, why are you always coming to tell me about this same person over and over again? What are they doing that is scratching you so badly? The person said, well, because coworker gets to say whatever they want and no one ever calls them out. So I said to the person, so what about you? The person said, well, I don't get to say that. Well, I'm nice. People don't expect me to say those things. So I said to the person, do you have things that bug you and you don't share? And the person responded with, yes. And then I said, well, it sounds to me that like you are frustrated with yourself. This person represents the part of yourself that you have imprisoned. Seeing someone else live so freely and fully without your permission triggers you. And I said to her, maybe you could learn from this 4 of yours. It took some work for the person to realize that part of their issues with this coworker was a projection of their own insecurities. Ultimately, when people push back, know that you were once there. Maybe they are triggered by your freedom to finally emerge as yourself. So when you start setting boundaries, expect that people are going to push back. Expect that people are not going to be happy with it, but don't take the pushback personally. See it as the person doing the pushback needs to do their own personal work. Maybe they don't have boundaries themselves. Maybe they're not used to boundary being set for them. The Bible talks about the truth setting us free. Boundary setting is showing up and telling our friends and families the truth. The truth about us, the truth about what hurts, the truth about where it hurts, the truth about what works, and the truth about what does not work. The truth is a form of boundary setting. It will set you free. It will set them free. And if they want to keep breaking your boundaries and refuse to accept your boundaries, the truth can also set the relationship free. Thanks for listening today. This is Jumi Olawale, and see you next time.